Good afternoon, everybody. And as part of National Apprenticeship Week, myself, Lorraine Sinnott, who's the head of training at Richmond, would like to welcome you to this question and answer session. And I'm also with my colleague who is...
Hello, Lisa Kelly. I am Head of Business Development.
So welcome to today. We're hoping to engage with many of you that may have some questions, or maybe just for us to share some information in relation to apprenticeships, how they can really support your business, no matter what the sector. Richmond Training, just to give you an oversight, is a health and social care provider, and we're based nationally across the country, with a real passion for apprenticeships and a real passion for career progression within that sector. So I'm going to hand you over to Lisa to give you some further information.
Thanks, Lorraine. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the strategic impact of having apprenticeships within your business. So, having a skilled and motivated care team is a priority. Adult care apprenticeships play a crucial role in cultivating a highly skilled and motivated care team. So, as an employer, by investing in apprenticeship programs, care homes, such as care home managers and employers, can ensure that their staff receive specialised training. They can stay updated on industry best practices and acquire the necessary skills to provide the high quality care that's needed. So, what else can you get out of this? Well, this approach not only enhances the competence of the individual caregiver, but it also contributes to an overall culture of excellence within the care home, raising that standard and that quality. It will also address workforce challenges. We all know in the care sector especially, workforce challenges can be really difficult. You're pulled from pillar to post. Your recruitment may not be as good as it needs to be. Your retention levels, we all know over the last few years how difficult that has been. So the impact of adult care apprenticeships, it just extends beyond that individual skill development. It'll address the broader workforce challenges, like we've just said, such as recruitment and retention. Lorraine will talk about the career pathway shortly. This is crucial for individuals to visualise their potential. They can then plan ahead for their gradual progression. It's also really important for care home managers, for employers to also really enforce this career pathway. So people can actually say, if I start off at this level, actually I can become this within a time frame. That will also encourage retention within the business. And like I say, Lorraine will go through that a little bit more in a while. So what else will you get out of it? It'll also make the care sector more attractive to potential employees. So creating a pipeline of well-trained professionals that are dedicated to their careers in adult care. This, like I say, can also sort of encourage more people to apply for these roles, to see that there are so many different aspects to the role and the career that you can actually obtain. So in turn, it will positively impact the reputation of the care home, and it will contribute to a more stable and competent workforce. So I've got some stats for you, which are always really important, and also it can verify what we see out there every day. So the healthcare landscape's evolving. Having a workforce that is continually learning and adapting and new practices, as we know, is essential. So here's some stats for you. 92% of companies that have taken on apprentices believe this leads to a more motivated and satisfied workforce. Something that is really important. You can try as hard as you want. If your workforce are not happy, you will not get the buy-in. 86% said apprenticeships help them develop skills relevant to their organisation, and 80% have seen a significant increase in employee retention. And as I've sort of talked about briefly, retention is really, really key. It's key to developing that workforce that you really do need for that high quality care. So I will now pass you on to Lorraine, and Lorraine will talk more in detail about the career pathways.
Thanks, Lisa. I think you've hit on some really key points actually on how apprenticeships and training and people having a really genuine, clear career pathway can really help each organisation and the sector as a whole. Being from a health and social care background myself, I have seen it change it dramatically over the last 20 years, none more so than since we went into lockdown with COVID. I think a lot of people left the sector and they felt a little bit undervalued, or the pressure was too much. And with them, they've left with their knowledge. They've lost that skill set from the sector, and they're the type of people that we also hope will come back into it once they feel that there is a genuine career, and that it's not just they're coming to a job to take the job and not move any further than the position that they're given when they arrive. So at Richmond, what we are hoping to achieve is an offer as a career pathway that can move people up into positions that they've possibly never thought about before. I think the reason for that is because it's always been an up and down kind of pathway for them. In order for somebody, for example, to start as a care worker and to develop themselves into a nursing role, this has often meant that they've had to leave employment, so losing that money so that they can attend a college or a university, which can be very time consuming for them, especially when they've got busy families, but also there's that financial loss. At Richmond, we understand that there is no one set way for anybody to reach their career goals. It is not a straight up and down. They can go up, down, sideways, move into different positions throughout that period of time, but always learning and always earning. So our proposition is to develop care staff to move into those nursing and allied healthcare roles by partnering up with some really good HE providers. We hope that this will open more doors for learners, make career opportunities easily available to those people, and hopefully again to coax back the people that did leave the care sector. Maybe they did feel a bit undervalued. Maybe they thought at the outset of their career that they wanted to go on to be nursing, but that it was just too expensive, too difficult, and they just found out it was not for them really. We are seeing a big shift in the sector now. I know with our own apprentices, many of them go over into the nursing or the allied healthcare roles. And I suppose that's what, along with the intelligence that we've got, I think that's what's really made our movement. So we're hoping that we can really forge those partnerships with our employers and our learners. As Lisa says, that's extremely important to us. And we look forward to what the future may bring to help to improve to reduce the vacancies within the health and social care sectors, and also to fill some of those many, many thousands of vacant roles within the NHS at the moment. So Lisa, I know that there'll be some questions around what this means for employers as from a costing implication.
Yeah, certainly, Lorraine. As many employers may be aware, but there are still some that aren't, there is funding for apprenticeships. It will depend on, whether you're a levy paying employer or a non-levy paying employer. So a levy paying employer, their wage bill will be above 3 million. That's how simple that is. So if you're an apprenticeship levy paying employer, you'll get funds to spend on training and assessing your apprentices. The government will add 10%. So what you will do is use the apprenticeship services account to manage your funding and provider payments. If you do not pay the apprenticeship levy, then as an employer, you will just pay 5% of the cost of the training and assessing. The government will then pay the 95%. So, you know, let's just put that into perspective. If you have a course that's valued at £4,000, you will be paying £200 as an employer as your contribution. I am right, aren't I, Lorraine? I did get my maths right then. Just double checking my maths. So, you know, if you think £200, you know, that's a small investment really for such a bigger opportunity for your member of staff. And apprenticeships as well. You know, some people do think apprenticeships are for new staff. They're not. Apprenticeships are for existing staff to upskill as well. You know, sometimes that can be something I'm asked quite a lot. Oh, this is only for new staff. No, it's not. It's for existing staff as well, which is so important, because there are so many staff at the moment that, you know, are within a role and not realizing actually with an apprenticeship they can progress to the next level, and actually get up that career ladder. So you know, if anyone's unsure about the apprenticeship funding at all, the government website is it's very easy to sort of have a look on there. They answer all your questions. They'll give examples, and it's quite clear how, as an employer, how you can go about getting, you know, what funding you'd be entitled to. As a training provider, we're there to obviously support you with all the advice, the guidance on the digital apprenticeship service and how you can use that. There is also help for other costs. So you can get, as an employer, £1,000 to support your apprentice in the workplace. There is some criteria to that. So there is sort of 16 to 18-year-olds. They will fall into that bracket. 19 to 25-year-olds with an education, health and care plan. And finally, 19 to 25-year-olds that used to be in care. Again, this isn't always widely known, so it's some really good information there. £1,000 for an employer can go a long way with supporting their apprentice. So if your apprentice is eligible for the £1,000, your training provider will give you this in 2 payments. That will be instalments of £500, and you'll get the first payment after 90 days and the second one after a year. Again, that is something your training provider will go through with you. So if you're an employer, if you're an employer and you know you've heard us talk about some of this information today, you know, you've seen the advantages and it's something that you are interested in, by all means you can ask us a question. We're live on air now, so we can take any questions, but also you can get in touch with us ourselves on our webpage, www.richmondtraining.uk. So yeah, you can visit us on all our social media platforms as well, and we would be happy to actually come out and speak to you in person as well. Lorraine, do you know if we've got any questions come through yet?
I think people want to hear a little bit more about the career pathways. So what we're doing is we're trying to look at the long-term workforce development, and we've identified that apprenticeship programs offer very clear and defined pathways for people working within the adult care sector. It's care home employees, it's domiciliary care, it's all of the different care roles within the health and social care pathways that this is available to. It works out as a long-term approach to workforce development, and it benefits each individual as well as the current employer. But can you imagine if you're an employer, Lisa, and that you've supported apprentices, you've really given them a great grounding, you've invested some time and a little bit of money in order to develop those people's knowledge, skills, behaviours, and given them the opportunity to go out and be future nurses and allied healthcare roles. I just think there can't be anything much more rewarding than that, really.
Absolutely.
You know, our current pathway looks like if we got a learner a level 2, so hasn't been in care for longer than 12 months, really wants to learn more about the sector. The adult care worker apprenticeship is for those people. For those who have maybe been in care for a little bit longer, looking to move up into a more senior position, we have the lead adult care worker. We then have those people who have developed themselves to be more of a leader, and they maybe look after a small team. We have the lead practitioner in adult care. And then obviously for our registered managers or deputy registered managers, we have the leader in adult care. But at any point from a level 3 upwards, our pathway, as discussed earlier, can move into the more allied and the healthcare professional roles, so such as registered nurses or becoming qualified clinicians. So I think that it's a really good offering. It was something that was not available when I was working within the health and social care sector. And I know that I would really be quite pleased about that now, because I think it's just a more natural progression for people to be able to move into, and especially in the current climate that we're living in. You know, accessing education is not always easy, and we've tried to make that a little bit easier for people if they're just willing to dig deep now, set their goals and aims higher. We will absolutely help and support them to meet those.
Can I ask, Lorraine, I get asked this question a lot whilst I'm sort of out and about speaking to employers. If they are doing a role, but they say, for instance, they're on a level 2, can they go to a higher up level, like a level 4 straight away, or do they have to go from level 2 to 3 to 4 to 5?
There's never a one-way plan that suits everybody. It would depend on their level of ability for one, and the job role for two. I would never encourage somebody to skip the level 3, because I think there's some important knowledge, skills and behaviours within that qualification that set you up quite nicely, including the maths and the English. From level 1, that can be quite a jump to level 2. So by doing that, that pathway from a level 2 to a 3 to a 4, you're also developing wider skills, such as your writing ability is improved, your ability to reference where your research is coming from, and you can also draw on a lot more of your own personal experiences, which I think are really added value.
Yeah, definitely. And we talk, as a training provider, we talk a lot about evidence, gathering evidence. How can you explain that to somebody listening now that's sort of thinking, well, I'd like to do a level 4, but actually what do I need to have perhaps already learned or should be learning to do that?
Again, that's very varied, and the standards are set at a certain way, which we know that we have to meet. But the way that we gather evidence is through various sources. It could be observation, off-the-job activity. That's most important, that an employer engages with that and gives any apprentice the opportunity to learn more, especially when they're looking to progress to a higher level. We would be teaching things such as effective communication, understanding how to safeguard our vulnerable adults, working in a safe manner, and how to manage teams. I think that's a really important part of the level 4, because it is that nice step in between the 3 and the 5.
Yeah. I
mean, everything that we're delivering has transferable skills, so it will support progression into a role within the NHS. So people can then go over with maybe some more clinical skills or the basic health and social care understanding, particularly relating to legislation, that they can take with them, and it's transferable.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know sort of I'll always get asked with the career pathway about,
Yeah.
I want to become a care home manager. What how do I become that? And I tend to have that important conversation about, well, are you getting any experience of that at the moment? Can you be given any sort of extra responsibility and duties, because you don't necessarily have to be doing that care manager role job straight away, but you're working towards it and gathering that evidence that
Yeah,
needs.
and that's absolutely the right way. And with the information, advice and guidance that we give to learners, it is on an individual basis. Their individual learning plan will look quite different from a colleague of theirs because it is unique to them.
Yeah.
The optional units that are selected are unique to them. So for our adult care apprenticeships currently, they contain obviously the maths and the English, functional skills, which again informs part of our programme. Learners are not expected to go off to night school or to a college to do that. It's all part of the apprenticeship delivery, and they will attend teaching sessions for that. We have the diploma, which is the most practical part of the apprenticeship programme. There's a lot of demonstrating how apprentices have used their knowledge to inform their practice and to make the relevant improvements. And then there's a standard that actually assesses the knowledge, the skills and behaviours of people. That's assessed through various different routes. It can be through discussions that you have with individuals. It can be through them undertaking some guided research, or it can be demonstratable on the job. And again, I can't reiterate enough how important off the job learning is.
Yeah.
And 6 hours a week, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. And I think if most carers were honest, they would say that they do a lot more than that, but they haven't really made the connection between the two.
Yeah.
I know that our managers now are really embracing it. Yeah, because I think we're all guilty of that. We do a lot of something. And if we don't really make the connection as to what that is, it seems 6 hours is an awful lot. But we are finding that our managers are giving feedback that is indicating they can really see the benefits of the investment that they've made. They can really see how the off-the-job learning has been implemented into the role and has already started to make changes. And sometimes they can be very small changes. It may be an ability, but it may also be people growing in confidence.
Yeah.
Having that confidence to go and have a try at different tasks, and also to be assessed at all times throughout. It also informs the part of their development plan overall. So it's a really critical part of the whole apprenticeship, really.
Yeah, I've had a question come through that's asking about endpoint assessments. Obviously, years ago, prior to the standards, we didn't have endpoint assessments.
No.
And I think some new employers that have perhaps never had an apprentice before, they don't understand what we call an EPA, that the learners going into EPA. You're probably best placed, Lorraine. Would you mind just explaining a bit about EPA, what it means?
Not at all. It's slightly different dependent on the level of the qualification. But the aim of the endpoint assessment is to allow learners the opportunity to share and demonstrate what they've learned throughout that time on the apprenticeship. So it's a really good time to consolidate all of that knowledge, all of those skills and all of those behaviours, and to be able to almost check and confirm that they've retained that. So this can be done through an online or a face-to-face multiple choice exam. It could be a professional discussion with somebody from the Endpoint Assessment Awarding organisation. So they are completely impartial, and they, again, will usually try and stretch a learner that little bit more to be able to give them the opportunity to share what they feel they've learned and benefited from completing the apprenticeship programme. It all relates to standards, so it's how they've met them. There are also, at the higher levels, there's an expectation for an observation of practice. Again, that's a representative from the external awarding organisation. They will liaise with the learner, they'll find out about them, their job role, and that will be planned in with them dependent on what that role is. So again, it's not a one size suits all. They are all structured assessments, but there's variables within so that they can reflect the different roles and opportunities that are available to the apprentice. They are all graded. We have they start with a fail. If a learner does fail, they do have an opportunity to resit that assessment one more time.
Oh, that's good.
They then have the opportunity to get a pass, a merit or distinction. And the guidelines for this are very clear on what a learner needs to do in order to meet each of those grade expectations. I know with Richmond that we've embedded it into our programs so that at any one time, an employer and a learner will always know where they're currently sitting and what they need to do to maybe get up to the next higher grade.
Yeah.
Again, endpoint assessment. Yes, it is all about the learner, but the employer has a really important part to play in that. No learner will be submitted for endpoint assessment until we know for sure that they are ready, both from our perspective and also from the employer. There's a meeting that takes place, a three-way meeting, where all of the standards are reviewed and revisited, and only when all parties confirm that they feel a learner is ready does a learner enter the endpoint assessment. They have up to 3 months to complete the endpoint assessment. Some organisations are a little bit quicker than others. Ours tend to get through in around 6-8 weeks, and the results are almost instantaneous, so they're within a day.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really valuable tool actually for any apprentice to kind of reflect upon what it is that they have actually learned.
Yeah.
It can be quite difficult when you're on a lengthy programme to retain everything, because you've moved on to the next subject. So it is that consolidation at the end. And I think it's really valuable, but that's a great question.
And then I know from having done an apprenticeship myself, throughout you're actually contributing towards your endpoint assessment, aren't you? You're sort of getting things ready constantly, so it doesn't come as this massive shock at the end of your sort of.
It shouldn't do. No, it shouldn't do. It's explained at day one, so learners are always aware of what the requirements are, and they are given really in-depth but easy to use guidance notes. So as I say, they can be self-assessing all the time. They've always got the criteria for the different levels so that they know where they're currently sitting, and by stretching that little bit more, what they need to do in order to achieve the highest grade possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think just sort of finally before we finish, I think one thing I'd like to put across when we were talking earlier about strategic impact of apprenticeships, and the employer engagement is crucial. Gone are the days where your employees put on a course and you as an employer don't really know anything until they've completed it. Those days have gone. We like that commitment from employers. It's important that they know how their employees doing, and that's where reviews come into play. The communication throughout is, that's a priority. It should be for all training providers. I know certainly is for ourselves at Richmond. Without that communication, it's really difficult sometimes to keep that sort of retention, and that dedication. So for us, that engagement in, the three parties, the employer, the learner and ourselves. But, if any employers watching this, if you're thinking of taking on an apprentice, of upskilling your staff, you can contact us after this and we'll answer any questions.